Shalom. The Israelites, when they were in the land of Israel, they worshipped foreign gods. They worshipped the gods of the Canaanites and the peoples around them. For that reason, the northern tribes, the northern 10 tribes, were exiled. This is detailed in the second book of Kings, chapter 17. And one of the false gods they worshipped was known as Baal. Afterwards, they were taken into exile. They lost consciousness of their ancestry. They became the 10 tribes of Israel. They were the majority of the Israelite nation. The Israelite people had split into two different sections. The northern section was the majority of the Israelite nation. They were taken into captivity, taken away, exiled by the Assyrians, and they forgot who they were and the places they were taken to. And from these places, they broke free, or were pushed northwards and to the west, and they eventually converged. All of them converged in what is now Western Europe, including Ireland and Britain and the coastal areas of Europe. And they remained there, and they were influenced, or they were actually not only influenced, they were the people giving the influence over. They became the propagators and the foremost developers, one could say, of what is so-called Celtic civilization. And the Celts, incidentally, did not call themselves Celts. They called themselves Iberi or Heberi, meaning Hebrew. And they had a lot of Hebrew customs. In addition to that, they also had Canaanite-type practices, amongst which they worshipped Baal. They continued to worship Baal, just as they had done when they were in the Middle East. And Hosea, the prophet Hosea, describes them as continuing to worship Baal in their places of exile, and they were upbraided, they were reproved for this by God through prophecy. And but this in some way, as unsavory as it may be, this is also an indication. It confirms the great deal of evidence we have saying that these peoples were descended from the tribes of Israel. So what was the worship of Baal? So one of the major agencies, one could say, of Baal worship was the Canaanite people. The Canaanite people helped found the Phoenician cities. The major Phoenician city was Tyre. From Tyre, other cities were found. They established colonies in various areas. One of the places they established, they set up, was the city of Carthage. Carthage was now Tripoli in North Africa, and Carthage became a great and powerful empire in its own right. And there too in Carthage, they also worshipped Baal. And a famous general, military leader of Carthage, is recorded of having sacrificed his son to Baal when he was besieging a city. See Diodorus, 1386. Another Carthaginian general known as Malleus, he crucified his son as a sacrifice to Baal. He dressed up his son as a royal personage before crucifying him. And Philo of Byblus was also a Phoenician city. It was on the Lebanese coast, and he says it was customary for the king to give his son to die for the nation as a ransom offered to the avenging angels. And there's a reference to this, a hint of this in the book of Micah 6:7, where he says, "Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul?" This is a rhetorical section, meaning of course he would not do. He would not do like the pagans do. God does not require this of us. But the pagans believed he did, and they worship Baal in this way. In Jeremiah 9:5-6, we are told they also built the high places of Baal to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings unto Baal, which I commanded not, nor spake it, neither came it into my mind. Therefore this place shall no more be called Tophet, nor the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. In the Middle Eastern mythology, home of Baal was said to be Mount Zephon, meaning the northern mountain or the hidden mountain. was close to Antioch in northern Syria. Anat was the sister and also the consort, the wife, one could say, of Baal. Baal is sometimes described as the son of El. El also means God in Hebrew. And also Baal is also otherwise considered the son of Dagon. Dagon is famous for being a major god worshipped by the Philistines in the south. And the Israelites worshipped these gods in a similar fashion, as far as we can tell, as did the Canaanites. And they were exiled for doing so, as the Bible tells us, and then they were taken to the west or moved to the west, and in the west they continued to worship the Baal. And we have evidence of this. We find a dedication from the Phoenicians to Baal in Marseilles. Marseilles in southeast France. The Phoenicians had reached that area, and they had taken their worship of Baal with them. But Baal is sometimes known in East Semitic form, that is the region of Mesopotamia, of Assyria, Babylon, and so on, as Baal. Baal is another form of the word Baal that is the same, exactly the same. Baal is more European sounding, and the Israelites, when they were in the West, they had moved together, amalgamated, federated with other people, such as the descendants of Gomer and so on. And they had their language had merged with that of the Indo-Europeans. So they also used the form Baal, Bel for Baal. They used the form Bel for Baal. And Bel is also referred to as Belenus. He was worshipped in Gaul, that is France, Holland, and the region, Switzerland. He was worshipped in Britain, Celtic areas of Italy, Austria, northern Spain. And his consort, his feminine mistress, was known as Bel-Sema. Bel-Sema was the name of was the woman of Belenus, of Bel. Bel-Sema is similar to a Phoenician pronunciation of Baal Samaim, or Baal Shamayim, meaning Baal of heavens, whom was worshipped in northern Syria by this name. And Bel-Sema is another way of saying this very same name, and this was the consort of Belena or Bel in the west. Also, we have an island. We have Baal, which is the same, another form of Baal. Actually, it's similar to the Hebrew word for one of the Hebrew pronunciations of Baal. Baal in Ireland was known as Baal Semhan, which is also reminiscent of Baal Samaim. Very similar ways of saying the same word, meaning the Baal of heaven, Lord of heaven. Also, we find the festival of Beltane in Welsh. It means the fire of Baal, and the practice of Beltane was to light fires and have people jump over the fires or pass through the fires or pass through the smoke, and also bring livestock, cows and pigs and horses, I don't know, whatever you have, and have them also pass through these flames as something good, something that could bring a blessing upon them and give them protection. And this festival was found in England, present-day England, and in Scotland, and in Sweden, and in Ireland. And as we said, the very name means fire of Bel, Beltane. Also, this festival also includes dancing around a maypole, And the Bible mentions the use of a pole in Baal worship. They made a sacred pole, see 2 Kings 17:6. And also the practice of jumping over the fires and so on that is similar to the practice of Moloch, which is associated with the worship of Baal. It's mentioned in the Bible, in Leviticus 18 to verse 21. It says, "You shall not let any of your seed pass through the fire to Moloch." See Jeremiah 32 verse 35, and they built the high places of Baal, which in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire unto Moloch, just like the Celts in the west were doing, which I commanded them not. Now there came it into my mind that they should do this abomination. But they did do it, and it was known, and they carried it on. Whether we like to admit it or not, this is the reality. This is what they were doing. They were worshipping Baal and continuing the pagan practices that had picked up in the land of Canaan and the land of Israel, and which had caused them to be exiled. Even though we have numerous names in Britain and Ireland with the root associated with Baal. We have Baal Ibay, Baal Teni, Baal Homes, Baal Inlur, Baal Mork, Baal Nagod. And it's also said that in Britain, place names associated with Baal, they're usually stone circles or other megalithic remains, megalithic monuments, which we are shown were also to be associated with Israelites and to trace Israelite migrations to the west, to that area. And in addition, parallels such as Asherah was also known amongst the Angles and the Saxons as Ashtoreth, which is a Middle East pronunciation of the name, and the other gods of the pagan Canaanites were also to be found, or similarities to them were to be found in the west. And all this proves that they had migrated from the east to the west. And the prophet Hosea says that the 10 tribes in their places of exile would do that. They would continue to worship Baal, and they would be reproved for doing so. We find Belmarchus, which in Syria was another form of the worship of Baal, had altars set up in Paris, and in the region of Paris, which is now France, and also in Armorica, the region of Brittany on the French coast, and the northwest French coast opposite Brittany, a priest is still called, is referred to as a Belek. There's a name for a priest in that region. And Belek in the local dialect means servant of Baal, or Baal. The priest is being called a servant of Baal. Baal is still worshipped or considered a name for God in that area. And also in Welsh mythology, we have Billy and Belly, and being an ancestral god, possibly even having given his name to Wales. Another way of pronouncing Bailey or Bali may have been Balanti, which became Wales. At all events, in Scandinavia we also have Baldur, the god, Scandinavian god known as Baldur, is killed and comes back to life, which reminds us of Middle Eastern deities, which also were attributed to this quality. At all events, we see the worship of Baal and also of other gods and other pagan practices being conducted in the West amongst Celtic peoples, and this is an additional proof, or confirms the proofs we already have that these peoples were of Israelite descent. That is the main point. That is the point we have to bring home to ourselves, that these peoples are of Israelite descent. That is where the lost tribes are to be found. They were exiled for a reason. They have a mission to perform in history, and in the end times they will return and reunite with Judah, with the Jews, as described in Ezekiel 37. May the Lord God of Israel bless all of you. Thank you.